welcome to the next episode of Fluid Life Unfiltered. I'm Kim McWatt, Director of Marketing at Fluid Life, and I'll be your host. Today, we'll be talking about the importance of proper sampling procedures and how it can affect the success of your oil analysis program. With me is Bernie Hall, General Manager of Checkfluid. Welcome, Bernie, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thank you very much for inviting me. I am the General Manager at Checkfluid, and I just wanted to give a little bit of a background, if I could, to
Sure.
Checkfluid. We've been in business now for over 20 years. We started back in 2001. It was kind of an exciting time thinking back at that particular point. We had just come off of doing some development work, actually, for a fairly major mobile equipment manufacturer, but then the company got sold, and we were into a position where we had to kind of rethink the whole process. And me and a few colleagues, we put our heads together and we came up with another sampling valve. The company that I'd been with had been involved a lot with the quick coupling side of it, so we knew fluid transfer fairly well. And so we put together what has turned out to be a very kind of exciting flagship product for us. It was a push-button style valve that also had the companion piece, which was the mobile sampling valve, which was able to connect dynamically, which is something that at the time was not really entrenched, I guess, within that particular product group. So we were able to do that, and that was kind of a nice success. And we built on it over the years, and a lot of it had to do, and we are very thankful that we had a lot of feedback from our customers about different products, different ways that we can improve things. And that's the way we see progress happening overall, is being able to get good dialogue where there might be an opportunity, and we try and maintain that particular perspective as the business continues to grow, as we like to hear from people if they've got a particular application that we haven't maybe been able to, or that is maybe a little bit different than maybe what they're used to. That's something that we certainly relish the opportunity of kind of working with anybody. So that being said, it is something that we do have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. The first product was in the pressurized type. We differentiate between the valves, between a pressurized style valve, which is basically, it's got an oil pump, it's got some sort of a pump arrangement on it where you can get the sample off through the pump itself. Others, you're going to need a vacuum pump, or you're going to need some way of extracting it otherwise. So we tend to differentiate between products in those two particular spaces, and I think a lot of your customers, I think, will easily relate to that particular part of it. So it was one of the things that we saw a need in the market for, in the non-pressurized or the low pressurized space, to develop a higher flow to meet the higher viscosities that are being there. Being in Canada here, we've got the cold winters, or we used to have the cold winters.
We used to.
Very the cold winters. But in any case, it was always challenging to have people being able to draw samples and the oil wasn't flowing. And so, I mean, that kind of goes back to one of the points that I'll try and make a little later on, about how important it is to have a convenient way of taking a sample. So those are things that we had developed just basically over the years, and we continue to look at different types of applications, trying to make that sample a simple sample to take, and also a sample that is first and foremost is going to provide the accuracy that you at Fluid Life and you do a marvelous job of being able to kind of come up with the analysis, the patterns that exist within a particular oil sample. As I've come to learn, and again, it's a learning process for me as well, that the patterns that are developed through the very detailed analysis that a lab such as yours has, it really does make a huge difference of being able to kind of determine a lot of the the next steps that somebody should be taking on in any particular application or any particular circumstance. So it is something that a lot of people don't think of it necessarily in that view, but we always like to try and paint a picture of us going down and sitting down in the doctor's office and saying, okay, well, here in the, we sit down and the doctor walks in, picks up the lab report, and the brow furrows. Oh, what's happening here? And, you kind of quietly say, well, should we take another sample? And
yeah, I know. Are you sure?
But in any case, it is something that when we look at the process that we have our blood taken, it's clean. It's somebody's already swabbed the surface to make sure that it is clean. That's a very important part. It's taken from that same spot all the time. It's taken from one of your arms, and so there's a lot of variability that has been taken out of that whole process as the sample is taken. And I think that if we can kind of paint that picture to our team overall, and especially that element about the cleanliness, it's so important, I think, to be able to kind of relay that as a fundamental part of being able to get the analysis and the accuracy of the sample that I think that we really are looking for. So, in any case, it is something that I just wanted to kind of paint that picture, because I think it's a very good one, I think, for a lot of people to be able to kind of convey that to all levels. I think everybody can kind of relate to it. So, yeah. So I'm sorry, I've been going on a little bit about how we started, but we'll, you had some other questions, Kim.
Yes, I did. So you talked a bit about this, and both Fluid Life and Checkfluid, we all believe the same thing, clean representative sample, like you mentioned, that clean representative sample that we can trend over time is really an important thing. Like, we want to be able to have the most accurate data to make that sound kind of maintenance decision that is needed especially when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment, right? So why should organizations take sampling more seriously? Like, I know that there's a lot of people that, they already have done sampling and everything like that, but there's still sometimes there's some pieces missing. So why should they take take oil sampling seriously?
Well, it's an excellent question, because I think a lot of times, I think we don't really fully appreciate, certainly what sampling and oil analysis can deliver to an operation. Like, it really, when we see or we get the feedback on how profitable the overall process is, it's it really, sometimes it has me scratching my head why we don't really sit back for a minute and really kind of realize that there's a tremendous value that in some cases is being overlooked. There's a lot of effort, as we all know, about just taking the sample, sending somebody out. It's shutting a piece of equipment down, bringing it back in, sending it off, getting it analyzed, having it come back, and not to have it in as good a shape as you possibly can. Seems like there's a lot of value that's being left on the table by not doing it what I consider to be best practice. And it's not just me, it's the industry considered it to be, a best practice way of approaching oil analysis. So it is something, I mean, we've kind of our when we first started, we called it we call it the first step in oil analysis, and that's really what the idea is, getting that really good sample, and that's what we're all about, is trying to get that particular piece kind of looked at and just considered. In some cases, it's just thinking about it for a minute and realizing that, we do it from, whether we're in the doctor's office or elsewhere, you want to do it right to start off with, and it really should be as good as you possibly can. And as we all know, I mean, there's tremendous amount of challenges. It's one thing to be sitting in a doctor's office or in a nurse's office getting or the lab getting the analysis done or getting the sample taken. Another one being out in the conditions that I know many of your customers are dealing with. I mean, I'm always amazed at, where people are taking the samples from. Where in the world are people taking the samples from? And it's really quite amazing, whether it's underground or, on, up mountaintops and so forth. So it really can be very much of a challenge, I think, overall. So I think that's one of the things, and we hit on the idea of, getting the trending, that can be trended over time. And I think that is, again, hearkening back to, kind of our the blood tests. You're going to have to see that doctor that has furrowed the brow. They're going to say, oh, we're pretty confident that this sample has been taken well. We'll either, maybe we should get on with it and we should come up with some treatment for you, or be able to do it, or maybe they might just say, well, let's just keep it trending and take a look at it for the next time through, so that we don't need to overreact to it. We need to be able to look at it in a measured fashion. So I think that from that particular standpoint, it's important, I think, that you get that, so that you've got that piece. It's very much of a confidence factor too, because it provides that underlie of the whole oil analysis program. If you've got that confidence, the person that's looking at the report, in combination with the analysts, your analysts, being able to kind of come up with a plan of doing it. And many of the people, like, there's different people that we have worked with over time. One that has been a tremendous amount of experience, probably about 30, 40 years. And one of his points is that every machine is different. Like, you can have the same make, model, year, virtually everything, maybe even working in the same area, but generally there's some small differences. So it's important, I think, to be able to kind of recognize that as unique, same as we're unique in some respects. That particular part of it should be recognized as far as trying to get that really good sample to be able to kind of analyze that piece of equipment as thoroughly and as meaningfully as possible. Right. So, yeah.
Okay. So in your experience, like, what kind of are the issues that can lead to poor sampling? Like, I know that when you're adding in valves and things, it's going to make things more consistent, but what can make sampling ultimately turn out like not really not relevant, or isn't helpful?
Well, I mean, there's many factors that could do. There's probably a list. There's a very long list of all the things that can go wrong in sampling. But I think that we kind of like to look at it from the standpoint, I mean, there's always good, better, best, but it is something that you want to try and look at it as comprehensively as possible. And the three areas that we like to look at is the fact that, first of all, you want to get the active oil. It must be representative. It must represent what is actually lubricating the system. You've got to remember that contact zone and okay, where is that oil? And that's the oil that you really want to try and focus on. That's why it's important not to look at that location. In some cases, it is like sampling from a dead lake. So, there's, in the early days, we'd see hydraulic actuator lines that would have a sampling valve on it, and that system wasn't even activated at the time of the sampling. So it's yesterday's news. It's not. Right. It's something that happened sometime in the past, and it's the same thing with purging. A lot of times, I know it's something that a lot of people don't necessarily give full weight to, but it is something that if for any reason you do have a port or a sampling location that is removed a little bit away from from a spot where you've got a remote access line of some form or other, it's so important to purge it. We do have data that can support or can help you out as far as being able to kind of take that particular amount out, so that you've got fresh oil that you're looking
Right.
at, and it really makes such a difference. It is something that it doesn't really take that much, but it does take that extra bit of
And
time.
location can make a difference too, right? Like
Oh,
before a filter,
absolutely.
after a filter, like you could actually completely mess up your sample, like your actual results by not knowing where it was taken from.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a great example of pre-filter, post-filter type of thing. It should be pre-filter. That's the go-to. If there's any one thing that I could leave you with in terms of location, it's pre-filter. Try and see if you can get it on whatever system it is before it actually goes through the filter. Typically, it's going to be at a lower pressure, and so from that standpoint, you're getting a lot of things that are right about a sample. They're not moving too fast. That's always a problem in some cases if you've got a hydraulic line that maybe is where you've got the velocity of the fluid going a little bit faster than getting the best or the most representative sample. But for the most part, it's getting that very good location. And
Mhm.
there's data that we do have we can help out with. There's actually a ASTM paper that has done a good job in combination with different experts in the field of being able to kind of pinpoint different spots. In some
Okay.
cases, more complex ones, they indicate a primary, secondary, and tertiary location for taking the samples. And they're not necessarily all going to be the same, even though they're the same system. So
Right.
that's, I know it complicates it, but typically, just from a primary standpoint, getting that good primary sample at the right location is
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 important.
really a very fundamental step in really being able to get that
Okay.
good information.
So for someone that's just getting started and setting up a consistent sampling process, what kind of things should they be taking into consideration, and what would you recommend that you should include in a solid sampling program?
Sure. I think that it is something that does require, I think, a certain amount of um, just of kind of that general approach to looking at it and making sure that first of all, that people are trained in that whole process of
Okay.
cleanliness. And there's more than just the cleanliness part of it, but it is something that there's a whole process that can be looked at. Not an overly complex one in my view, but it is something that it should promote the idea of people understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it, which is, I think, in a lot of cases, sometimes that gets missed, because I think a lot of people, a lot of operators really appreciate the fact that they're able to kind of have some sort of control over the piece of equipment that they're operating
Mhm.
with. So that's important. And quick turnaround, that's another factor that I think that needs to be done, so that when people get the sample off, that they turn it around and it's not sitting on
It's
somebody's
not
desk
sitting, yeah.
for a period of time, because that definitely, and I'm not sure how much you would know that a lot more so, Kim, but how much it can undermine the accuracy of the
Well,
sample.
it's true, because like if you take the sample sitting on your desk for a few days, but then like in that meantime, the machine, you could have had that sample already at the
Yeah.
lab and found out there was something wrong or that everything's right, but you've had that machine down for a while. It's like it really makes a big difference, because then your next sample is that much closer to that last one, and you're not getting that representative kind of look at how that machine is behaving in the health of it.
Yeah, no, excellent. That's a very good point. I think all that time where it's available to be able to act on it, or just kind of give you the peace of mind. Oh, everything's good, and we
Hmm.
can move on.
Exactly.
Is really very good. Is golden, really, to be able to do that. The idea of compliance, the idea of getting it in on time, so that when you're taking a look at it, it's not something that's delayed, and it's a function of um, the wear and tear that's gone on in between the time that it should have been taken and the time that it was taken. So I mean, it's a head scratcher. Like, is something going on, or is it? So it's so important to get the samples off on a timely basis, and making it easy for people to do that. If
Hmm.
it's easy, it gets done. If it's difficult,
It's
We
right.
both, we all know what the story is on that.
Yeah, the easier the better.
The compliance, yeah. So it is something that I think that process itself, going back to it, should be all of the pieces in place, and that really probably covers. It goes all the way from the operators, even though they may or may not be involved with the sampling, um, through the analyst or the go-to person that analyzes it, takes a look at the report at the customer's location, maintenance, what to do, how to prioritize, because I mean, it is something that's good to get the data, but to make
Right.
oil analysis sing, you really have to have somebody that can spring into action and be able to kind of prioritize what needs to be looked at quickly. And I think that and one thing that I continue to maybe even preach, I don't know, is the idea that management should be part of this particular
Right.
process. And I think a lot of times, there's an excellent amount of work that's being done, a lot of detailed work that in some cases just amazes me. But when I ask whether or not does management know what a great job you guys did, it doesn't get communicated. And I
Right.
think in a lot of cases that's it really kind of supports how the program is kind of viewed within the organization, and how a technology such a valuable technology like this can contribute to the financial
Mhm.
health of the organization. So I think it's, those are the four things that I would probably suggest is taking a look at that.
Okay. So obviously, sampling hardware is a critical aspect of any sampling process, right? So selecting the right hardware, it can be challenging because I know we get a lot of questions ourselves. Like we'll do an
Sure.
audit and we'll see, like, do a sampling point audit and recommend things. But there's often situations that are like, I don't know, we need some additional support in determining. So how would somebody on their own, like if there was some ideas of, what kind of steps should they take to determine the right hardware for their situation? Like, oftentimes you hear of things like having decision matrices or decision trees that can assist people. But what should they think about when they're looking at their own particular situation? So, like, for example, they're in harsh weather conditions. It could be winter, like you were mentioning, it could be winter. They get a lot of freeze ups over winter, or it's a high pressure system that they're looking at. How does one going to go, okay, I need sampling hardware, but I don't know, where do I start?
Okay, believe me, it's a question that we've been asked,
A lot.
frequently, and it is something that it's something. What we like to do is we like to be in a position where we try and get the best possible solution for it. And given that, the fact is sometimes there are certain locations, and depending on a number of circumstances, it could be budget, it could be time, it could be just that level of expertise. There's certain places where you can kind of put it and have it done very quickly and fairly inexpensively. So from an install standpoint, so it is something that we do have a chart. We do have some charts that we can help out with to be able to kind of direct you to different types of like application and some of these series that you might want to take a look at. One of the other things, and I don't want to comment on it. Probably this may be a good point to put it in, that we think of the idea of finding it, which is our main focus as part of sampling, and yours is from an oil analysis standpoint. But there's also the fixing part of it to really make the program provide the greatest value is the idea of fixing it. So the idea is that if you have what I'm trying to say is that the industry is moving to more of a condition-based approach to both sampling and to monitoring. So in some cases where you are, you might just want to look at sampling, but you also might want to consider the condition-based hardware that kind of goes along with it. So in other words, say for example, you can combine a sampling valve possibly with a level gauge to make sure that your level stays maintained. And that's an easy that's easy peasy. An operator can take a look at it, or a maintenance person can take a look at it, make sure that the oil has not gone down, which obviously would lead to a whole array of different
Right.
problems by not having it in place. There's opportunities perhaps of adding the sampling to filtration. So
Right.
that is something that is a part of that's it's an excellent part. More and more people are picking up on that as far as being able to take a look at it. And particularly if you've got contamination issues, great way of being able to kind of remediate the oil without actually having to change it or drop it, and the time and the cost associated with that. So we've always felt, and I mean, it's a very easy economic equation. It's a lot cheaper to draw a sample than it is to change an oil.
Mhm.
So, like, why not take a look at it and do it prior to a service? If you've got a service coming up, try and do it prior to, like, it's something that even with, in a doctor's setting or a medical setting, a lot of times, one of the things that I'm always amazed is, why don't we have a lab sample in front of the doctor before we sit down? Some do, some don't, but it is something that you want to be in a position where if you're going to do a service, you want to know what's going on as much as possible from the analysis and so forth. So it is something to kind of keep that in mind. So condition-based monitoring, I think is a trend, but I would think that, basically kind of going back to it, there's a number of different spots that we can kind of direct you to get that in, whether it includes condition-based hardware or not. That's a bit of a budget call, or a time call maybe in some cases, but we can get you into that space almost. There's a lot of difficult situations that we've been in that we can provide you with, and a lot of times there's some go-to product series that we can modify or adapt to make
Right.
sure that you can get in there. Different threads. We've got a whole array. We've probably got 30 threads in our lineup that we can do from around the world. So it doesn't matter where the hardware or where the components are coming from. In most cases, we can put something together for you.
Okay. So it really boils down to, you have to take a look at your own unique situation, unique criteria that you have for like for your equipment, and then deciding, probably starting off, is it low pressure, high pressure type of system?
Sure.
Looking at if it's the weather conditions, if it's indoor, outdoor, if there's a lot of dust, a lot of, contamination around. All these different types of things are the starting point, but then you're looking more and more at the actual, like, if you're starting with just a sample valve at this point in time, you're moving more towards that condition-based monitoring side, where you're actually having the level gauges and the filtration and everything combined to make it a much more efficient and effective process.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
I think that's kind of, I think, the direction that I think everybody has headed, and I think it's a great direction.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that you had some charts and things on your website. I could probably put some links at the end of the program here and put those on our website as well to get people to see them.
Sure. Yeah, we'll try and get those to you. I'll send those along to you afterwards so that you can incorporate those into our discussion here. So that would be great.
So most people think sampling hardware is just for oil. We've been talking about this as well, but what about sampling things like diesel fuel? Do you have any recommendations in terms of how you would go about setting up something for diesel fuel?
We do have some recommendations that we can do. I mean, there are the two areas. Is it on the machine? Are we fuel sampling on the machine? In which case there are valves that are specifically intended for that, aren't being used currently to be able to kind of do that sampling. The other are the storage facilities, the tanks, the tank farms, and so forth that have the fuel in there. And there's a number of different ways of kind of sampling. I was kind of educated myself in terms of how many different levels, whether or not you take a sample from the bottom, from a midpoint, and sometimes it has to do with the industry and so forth. But the one thing that other point that we like to be in a position is to be able to kind of take a look at it. I know condensation in tanks obviously is the big problem in most cases. So we do have something that actually will combine the being able to sample and also be able to kind of take out some of the bottom water that might be collecting in that particular area. So you've got a two-part process, as we probably know, that any of the free water that might be sitting there when the fluid heats up, it has a tendency to migrate throughout the system and will obviously have that impact on the equipment that it's going into, and obviously the injectors and all the other things down the road, which that's an expensive proposition. That particular one, there's another one it's kind of an interesting product that we're launching now, where you can actually, on something like DEF, which is something that is part and parcel of all our diesel engine equipment, has from time to time there are certain needs that you need to do, and we do have what's called a vacuum charge bottle. It could be done with a vacuum pump, or a vacuum charge bottle will take you directly from the DEF tank into a bottle. It's corrosion resistant, and it can go off. DEF is kind of it's a little bit nasty in something to be able to handling, but that's another way of approaching it. So there's a few different ways that we can tackle some of these more difficult type systems.
Okay, interesting. So overall, thank you, Bernie. This was really interesting, and there's a lot of great insights and helpful tips that we've kind of discussed. Do you have any final words of wisdom to pass on to our listeners?
I don't know. I mean, the words of wisdom, it's a good question, but I think it's the one thing that, and again, I can get passionate about it, but I think sampling, it can be fun, but it can be at least satisfying or leave you with a good feeling. I mean, the fact that you've been able to kind of take control over a particular piece of equipment, or plant, and be able to have that control is kind of a very nice feeling to be in. There's a lot of things that come from doing good sampling, which don't really get talked about a lot, but I think there's a lot of plants that do, from a safety standpoint, people who have got who are being able to have that approach, a very methodical approach to watching over their equipment, maintaining their equipment. There are things that are inherently safer about doing that type of a process. So from that standpoint, it's like we all of our people, we want to make sure that they go home, enjoy their lives and not have to worry from a safety standpoint. So that's something that I think that it is important, I think, to kind of take a look at that. And so we encourage companies to engage everybody in the process. I mean, all the way from operators, technicians, or sample taking, maintenance, management, into the process. So that's the only final words of wisdom, I guess, that I could probably provide.
Well, no, it's good to bring that up, because safety is an important element of any workplace, right? We have workplace health and safety boards, right? And so if you're taking samples on a running piece of equipment, that obviously you have to do that in a safe and controlled manner. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
interesting. So if people want to get in touch with you, Bernie, what's the best way they can do that?
There's certainly, if I can give you my email address there,
sure.
Feel free to contact me directly. I might put you in touch with one of our people who might be probably more knowledgeable about any particular piece, but it is something that feel free to contact me directly. We have a toll-free number, which maybe you can include with it. It's we also do have a chat function off of our home site. So home webpage. So if somebody's got an immediate question, unfortunately, it's being only maintained during
work hours,
Eastern time hours. But if we do have something there, we can definitely get back and as quickly as possible. Usually we try and do a quick turnaround within 24 hours of letting people know of whatever it happens to be, or sooner if we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good.
So thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Fluid Life Unfiltered, and be sure to like and subscribe our channel. Have a fantastic day.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.